And we'll leave to JP to resume the
Perfect. Thank you.
the
Thank you,
symposium.
Dr.
Thank you
Thank
so
you. And
much.
please
Have a
on the
nice afternoon.
and please join us on the 19th, please. Yeah.
Hopefully. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you so much.
JP, thank you very much for, of course, being part of earlier events and for this one. Now, only thing is that before I even get into introducing, of course, I'm introducing not required so much, but let me just put up what we're doing so that this comes up as to what the symposium is about. So, of course, this is symposium number 8. So those other 7, there's a certain kind of a series, some kind of a thought process I had. But this one, mediation legislation, the how, what, when, where, which, who, why of it. So this is what you're doing right now. And JP, of course, you have to tell us as much as you want about yourself. Then you give me that 30 seconds to put up my website just to tell people where to find information. So please.
No. I'm a lawyer practicing in the Delhi High Court. Of course, I've completed 4 decades in the profession. And yes, in our own humble way, we started the mediation movement in 2006. And today I feel happy the way it's progressed so far. And yes, lots of work still to be done. And I'm not doing so much as Vikram is doing, because Vikram is really taking the whole movement forward. We in our own way are trying to see that, people feel satisfied with the mediation process as much as possible, because as you were just talking about bringing courts in, unfortunately in India, and fortunately in India, it started as a court annex mediation experiment. Unlike in certain states in US, where it started with private mediation and the courts came in some states later. So they've had the taste of both, and probably we hope our experiment works, and of course private litigation picks up, private mediation picks up.
Although JP, what I've been trying to say is that, okay, we've had conciliations in 1996, so maybe lots of people are using it. We don't know about it because those settlement agreements don't come to court because everyone is satisfied. So I just keep as a positive thing. I say, oh, it's being used. It's being used a lot. What else?
Actually, Vikram, people looked at, if you see, in 1996 Act itself under Section 30 says that the arbitrator will encourage the use of mediation, conciliation for purpose of bringing about a settlement. But I don't think that, it was really seriously looked upon till 89 was amended. And again, 89 got challenged. You must realize, again, the court stepped in. When 89 was amended, it was challenged. Then it was the Supreme Court which set up the NCPC and also directed the Law Commission to frame rules, and every High Court to adopt those rules. And this is where, that's where I see the positive part of, mediation taken over by courts, because it has helped us to percolate mediation down to the grassroots level. Because if the courts had not stepped in, imagine how much of a Herculean task it would be to spread the word of mediation.
But JP, you have to look at it from my perspective. Then I have to tell my wife that we can't do too much work because JP is doing work for free. So when will we get work?
You see, Vikram, mediation started more with a humanistic face, where the idea was to help parties to empower parties so that can look at the disputes themselves, look at the relationship with the other side, improve that relationship with the other side, and ultimately look for a solution. But unfortunately, once it starts as a court annex system, then what we are more invested is in the settlement. That humanistic face has disappeared.
Absolutely.
Basically, it's transformation. That is important. Parties, even if the matter doesn't get resolved, I firmly believe parties, when they arrive at the negotiating table and when they leave, they are better human beings.
That's right. And they take that back and they take that back into their lives, and they change a lot of things around them because of that. I think that's when if they've gone through a process in a manner which is actually that humanistic aspect of it and working together on these things. So definitely. But what I will do, JP, is that for a second, I'll just put up that website thing. Why I want to take you through it, because what you just said is important. Of course, mediatorvikram.com. You find this. This is a new series I've started. You will also have to come on there to speak about your thoughts on magic and mediation. I'm going to fix up a session. So this is a book that Ken Cloak is writing, which he's going to come by the end of the year. So this is where information about me is lying. The World Mediation Circle, I want to take you through this because you just said about the humanistic part of it, the human connection. So the idea is that let's make these mediation circles in communities, schools, colleges, families, organizations everywhere. This part is what I was trying to, I think, connects to what you were saying. Bring moral values, principles, and ethics-based humanistic approach to dispute resolution, where heart, soul, spirituality play an important role in relation to that. So this is what I think needs to be put out as, which is what we were discussing earlier with Ravi also, that how do people understand mediation itself? I think to start there, and then when you look at legislation, are you even taking care of how people understand or how you would want mediation to be looked at? I think that also is somewhere connected to the legislation part of it, because
Vikram, mainly is actually change of mindset. And today, the way things are, unless we involve the courts and lawyers, mediation is going nowhere. See, parties have the mindset of today, and every litigant or a participant, as you may say, in mediation, is that whenever they get into a conflict situation, they go to their lawyer. Lawyer takes them to the court. So unless the mindset of the lawyer changes, unless instead of an adversarial, advocacy, unless they look at every conflict as a problem-solving approach, till then, it's not going to, because the lawyers, unless they tell their clients, because today the trust is in the lawyer. Everything that happens to you, you look to your lawyer. I mean, like if your body ails, you go to the doctor. Here today, the situation is every time a party is in a conflict situation, they think the lawyer is the best person to tell them that solution. They do not know that they can also go and approach a system or look at a system which helps them to directly approach the other side and talk to them about the whole dispute. And this is exactly what negotiation was meant to do. Mediation comes in later. Parties were supposed to negotiate their disputes. Unfortunately, since they don't have those skills, what happens? They become avoiders. So when you get into a conflict situation, you say conflict is bad, let's wait for some time. The other person will get off the foul mood that he's in today, and things would be good. But they don't. It surfaces with more vengeance when in future, when that same conflict surfaces, it comes with more vengeance. You might wish it goes away. It doesn't go away. But question is how to deal with those situations. Do I have the necessary skills? So let's forget about mediation. Should we not encourage negotiation at the community level?
Absolutely.
Today, that is what is required more. And only when parties are not in a position to negotiate, that they look for a third party help.
So this is exactly what I put up in my website also, but I'll show you that part. But the important thing I'll tell you about the World Mediation Circle also, when I'm putting up, I'm actually dividing them into the mediators and the peacemakers, because I feel that the role of a peacemaker, we need those in the community who actually get them together, and they sit together and of course settle it themselves if they can. If they can't, then they get in a mediator. That's exactly what the idea behind that is. And you're absolutely right. You don't rush into a mediation if you can do it yourself. So basically what I did was, these are the mediator, peacemaker brings people together to resolve it. That is what their role is, and they identify those with the mediator mindset. But I'll tell you what, JP, what we need to do is look at it from the perspective of the colonial mindset, that courts and lawyers are directly connected whenever a dispute is mentioned or resolution is mentioned. So to do away with that, in terms of the way legislation should be structured, what are your thoughts? Because for me, conciliation is, for me, an excellent law on mediation in our country. But you, of course, you worked on the bill, and the bill, of course, I feel got in the colonial part of it, that let's legislate. Now we're sitting, we should legislate a lot of things. So looking at these two aspects of it, how do you look at legislation? What should it look like?
To my mind, Vikram, I said it before, that Section 89, maybe it's not very happily drafted. I mean, that's what I've said. Draftsman's error. but it gave a fillip to the mediation movement. Maybe the court stepped in because actually the whole problem is the court came in wholesale because they said we are so much of pendency of matters, we need to get rid of those matters. Result is we got into a settlement culture. This was not the purpose of mediation. And today, 89, it may be very badly drafted, but it has now, at least now you and me are talking about mediation. In this country, even in spite of 1996 legislation, nobody talked about mediation. Today, at least we are talking about it. So therefore, 89 maybe is not properly worded. See, the need for legislation was because of the Singapore Convention. One of the reasons was because of the Singapore Convention. Singapore Convention said you need a domestic law. And that's where the whole concern was that we must do it fast, because otherwise we will have to adopt whatever the Singapore Convention says, unless we bring in our own domestic law. Government was lethargic. Then came in NCPC, the Supreme Court Project Committee. They set up a committee where I was also part of it. They said, instead of the government doing it, let's draft a legislation and send it to the government. And that's where the whole process started. Then the government, and it's been, let me tell you, whatever we sat and we proposed has been drastically changed. And the law is not coming in because I'm given to understand because probably the government is having second, look at the whole situation. If you remember when we may be the first signatories to the Singapore Convention, but our High Commissioner was rushed in to sign at the last moment, to sign that the treaty, the convention. And today I'm told there are second thoughts on it because therefore they are dragging their feet onto it. And in certain circles, I'm told even the government, the law minister has gone on to say that he may not be really, looking at the law. He may like to tweak the Arbitration and Conciliation Act as it exists.
So nice. That gives me lots of hope. This is really making me really happy.
Yeah, he's gone on record in some circles, of course, whispers that he may be looking at only tweaking the Arbitration and Conciliation Act.
That's all that's required, actually. Because I'm telling you, for me, as always, I mentioned it so many times in that symposium on colonization, decolonization, and mediation, that whenever we look at a legislation of this kind, which is a people's process, we should look at it from the perspective of a person sitting in a village in one remote corner of India. We, of course, huge, 1 billion people only in villages. So we have a legislation which is simply worded, and I keep telling people about look at it, don't look at the English version. Conciliation word is here. Look at the Hindi one. It says Sulh. Now, if I go out to a person in the village and say, look, there is a law on Sulh, he understands Sulh, he at least connects to the word. And then from there, it is something that they can read themselves, not difficult for them to read. And if they get to know that right there, okay, enforceability should not come in. Why should it be your whole thing focus on enforceability? But luckily, it's as good as a court decree. So it's easy to explain to them that you have a complete legislation right with you. This is empowering you so much that you don't have to go for any registration somewhere, nothing, no court, no government, no interference. This is your process. So it's so nice, easy to put it to them because they are the ones who are so disconnected from the court system because distance wise, I keep telling people 2,500 kilometers, the Supreme Court might be from your village somewhere. High Court might be 1,000, maybe more, maybe that much from your village. So in that kind of situation, when you have a whole process available to you, I feel if we can keep that legislation simple, but in that, if you feel that some things should need to be looked at, what are your thoughts on that?
Vikram, mediation was meant to be flexible. The more laws you legalize it, put it into a straitjacket formula. See, more rules, more procedures, you'll make it rigid. And this is exactly what is happening. And what you are saying is not without substance. And look at the new legislation. So I'm telling you the way it is proposed. You talk of taking it to the village level. Community mediation says it will not have the force of law. Exactly. It will not be. I don't understand the logic of it. So they're created within the provisions which are there. They've created, NALSA, different kind of mediation. Community mediation, different kind of mediation. Others will do different kind of mediation. What is happening?
I think the important thing for me is that if this aspect of, if a government is willing to understand that the control has to now go away. We have moved on. We are a democracy. Whether we are a democracy or not, that by itself might be debatable. But with the fact that we are independent, we are not a colonial, we are not a colony. So let's give it to the people. That I think is the difficult part. That how do we let people do everything? Where do we come in? I think that's where some role.
Technically, they did that. How many times have they taken a law and asked for comments from the stakeholders? This is the first time you would have found that so many people talked about, when it was publicized in the newspapers. Otherwise, law is pushed through parliament. You don't even get to hear about it. This was a law which was put up for comments before the general public and all other stakeholders. Then they had a meeting with almost all the stakeholders. The subcommittee was formed. But question is ultimately, what do you do with that? That's the important part. As you said, they're not going to let go of the hold. It's going to become again a same kind of a law, which will be, again, we'll keep debating. As you said, I remember that you talked about one of the things about mandating pre-litigation mediation. Though a lot of people have apprehensions and talk about it. See, let me tell you one thing. If they had not mandated it, or if the law is not mandated, as I told you, today we need awareness. Once you mandate law wholesale, people will go and try mediation. There will be an awareness with the general public and the lawyers that there's something like this. We need to try it out. And I'm telling you, all this mandating will stop after a few years. People will voluntarily want to mediate. Lawyers, see in Delhi High Court, look at the transition in the last few years. In Delhi High Court, lawyers are advising their clients, instead of starting with litigation, why don't you try pre-litigation mediation? That's the change in mindset.
But JP, this aspect of pre-litigation mediation, I have a big issue with you on that. You started this pre-litigation in the High Court, which was not the ones that were happening in court. You said, even if you don't have a matter in court, come to us, pay 500 rupees, and we will do pre-litigation mediation. You are going to.
That's not correct. That's a big. I don't think that's the correct way to look at it, Vikram. These were the actual divorce matters, specific, relief matters, which would have gone to court. But for the lawyers telling their clients, why don't you try pre-litigation? Not that we said that we'll give you something different.
No, you were taken out during the COVID period. Now that thing that you can.
COVID period was because, unfortunately, that was the time when we put none of the institutions were working. Mediation works because of the ODR. We went online. We laid down our guidelines, and we asked people that in case if you want to, you can approach us online. The results have been very, very encouraging. Let me tell you, Vikram. No, except for certain cases on confidentiality, that people were not willing to open up so much on issue because of lack of machinery today, like how to deal with the confidentiality issue. But in most matters, people participated because they were sitting at home, and from their homes they could participate in the process. Especially look at the matrimonial disputes which occurred during the COVID situation, and so many matters got resolved.
So JP, how I'm looking at it is that one is, of course, you feel that in terms of any litigation, people should be exploring this as an option. That part of it, you want it to happen in some way. But at the same time, we also, in terms of legislation, also have to look at the interest of the mediators. Because like I said, I'm not connected to the court system at all. And if private mediation, we still have to use the word private mediation, because I feel mediation has to be private. For me, of course, we have to use this terminology, court annex, private. But for a moment, let's use that terminology, private mediation. Now, for us, the point is that finally, if it is going to be free across the road, if I'm starting a restaurant and across the road you are giving it for free, how does it develop? Because if it doesn't develop outside the court system, that's not a long-term strategy. It's a short-term thing. Okay, right now there's backlog. The culture has to develop. Now, culture to develop, we need people practicing it. Now, if they are going to be competing with free, this is going to be really difficult for them, because I know there's a very senior mediator now. Niranjan, I don't know him, but Yeah. So he, in one of those, some webinar, I don't know whether you were part of that or not. He said that they opened up a mediation center in Ahmedabad, and they had to close it down because the court started a mediation center and they had no work. So that part of it, how do you look at it from the legislation perspective in terms of remunerating mediators so that it develops? Because you can't develop on free. It won't happen.
Vikram, the problem what is that, we are looking at, we are investing in settlements. We are investing in the outcome of mediation. That's the whole problem. And therefore remuneration becomes, important. But look at what you yourself want. You want it to percolate to the village level. How much can a villager pay a mediator? Secondly, the purpose of mediation is to remove conflict. It's not settlement of disputes. Settlement of disputes is what courts are looking at. Because, we are looking at our batting averages. How many matters have I been in a position to get resolved? What is my settlement rate? Unfortunately, that's becoming the problem. The purpose was not, as I told you, I started with this saying that the purpose of mediation was a humanistic approach. And you rightly, you're working on that. When you say that, the common man on the street or the villager must know what mediation is and he should be helped with their disputes. If you start putting these kind of, start today looking at only one aspect of mediation, that is the money, what I'm going to lose, whether I will be in a position to earn money out of mediation. I think we are actually approaching the whole subject in the wrong direction.
Because how I was looking at it was from the village perspective, that identifying those people within that, say one village or in that cluster number of villages, because there won't be so many people with that mediator mindset. There'll be few, but they will be identified there itself and to be used. So one is the traditional concept that people used to go to these people, they resolved a dispute. There was no concept of any payment. Maybe they could give them a gift, maybe not, but they were doing it because, of course, it was something that they wanted to do from the heart. And also they had in terms of their social standing, in some countries it is a certain, as a social standing thing, that okay, this person helps people resolve the dispute. So either we can look at it from that perspective, but then as developing it, that we do it, or they do it on a more, because the number of disputes have increased so much, so they should be able to do it on a long-term basis, on a regular basis. So I want them to be able to do that because they have a skill, and that skill everyone doesn't have. So to be able to have them being full-time mediators, for that remuneration will be something important, because if we tell them that, look, you have to do this for free, then they'll do it. They'll keep continue to do it. They won't stop doing it, because it comes from the heart. Like for you also, it comes from the heart. You want to do it. It's not that whether you don't get anything is not your concern at all. It's just because you want to do it. So similarly, there's so many people like that, but don't we need them full time? Because the number of disputes that they say, and India, of course, we say that 18 million go into courts, but outside the courts, there might be 400 million matters based on that Agami this Niti Ayog report, that the number of disputes outside is so many. So how do we be able to do that? How do we create an environment there?
Vikram, there are some matters which never land up in court because of cost, because of, it has not ripened into that situation where, somebody is really willing to take the matter to court. But you must realize, is today, whatever you are looking at, we need a pool of mediators today who would look at, the humanistic face of mediation. Mediation was meant to improve relationships. It was meant for empowering parties so that they can look at their own disputes themselves and see what kind of solutions that they want. So in case if I start saying, and look at this situation, but litigation is expensive. If I make mediation expensive too, how do you spread mediation? And there was a debate, the same kind of debate on mandating mediation. It happened in some states in the US. And I'll give you what they said, and the beautiful 4 lines. He says, so in that way, having an institutionalized system, at least initially mandating it, you educate the parties and spread mediation in a way that is much faster than if you went through a slow learning curve of just letting people seep through the system. We today need to spread the word. And spreading is not easy unless you mandate, unless people know that you have to go through the process of mediation. And what is it?
But only thing, JP, hasn't it now in a way not really worked to the extent like you were saying that they become largely settlement conferences?
Because it started as a court annex mediation.
That's the thing. Now, how do we, because we need to balance this out in a manner where definitely you want people to know about it. And of course, awareness happens, but awareness should happen to the process that you would want them to connect to, which is, of course, the humanistic part of it.
There I'm looking at, I raised this issue, when we had this national conference where I said, look, in places like New Zealand, Australia and other countries, all these institutions are actually funded by NGOs or governments, the service providers, and to the end user is given for free. Similarly, why can't we have provision today in the Companies Act where, like, CSR, social, responsibility of a company? Why can't we have such provisions where the court says that the government says by amending the Companies Act that this is what you can, funding a service provider for purpose of mediation would be covered under CSR.
Yeah.
You have to look at those provisions where ultimately the user doesn't land up paying. So maybe the state government needs to fund. The central government needs to fund these institutions because it will end litigation in courts. You today want litigation to be reduced. And that's why courts are looking at ADR. Today, the government is looking at ADR. And today, you want to make India as the hub, international hub for arbitration mediation. Unless why is Singapore doing well? It is supported by the courts, is supported by the government. Both.
Okay, so because
let me tell you, it's not less expensive. It's very expensive. The arbitration, the international arbitration today, 75%, the arbitration is either one of the parties is an Indian, which is going to Singapore. And today it's becoming very expensive. I'm sure they're looking up to India to establish international hub. But how do you do that unless there's government support? Court is today very much interested. Therefore, you're getting it started as a court annex mediation. Supreme Court is pushing it. Courts are pushing it. But government has to step in.
So you feel that on one end, that legislation in relation to mediation in the court system stays. Remuneration should not be something that should be looked at. And
or remuneration, yes, Vikram, but let somebody else pay for it, those services.
Okay. So basically, in a way that either the taxpayer or someone else will fund the dispute of people. Don't let that happen, JP. I'll tell you what is happening.
Not fund the dispute. Look at how, after all, you are part of the same society. You cannot live with conflict around you. You need the conflict around you to disappear. So you owe the same responsibility to ensure that that you have mechanisms in place which would remove conflict from the society, and therefore the effect will be litigation would be reduced.
What I need to tell him, Himana, your session is after an hour. Himana's come in early. So Himana 1 hour later. But doesn't matter, you can stay.
Vikram's timelines, maybe like.
She's in Ecuador. She's got the time wrong. Himana, hi.
Hi. I'm sorry, I'm early. It's okay. I'll just wait. Hi. Good morning.
Your session is after 1 hour. It's after 1 hour.
Oh, okay. So
yes,
I'm like really
you've come really early. You can spend time here. It's not a problem.
Sometimes I thought it was in 2 minutes. Okay.
No. You got a 1 hour difference there. So.
Oh, okay. Well.
Totally your wish. You can sit here. There's someone from Brazil coming in after JP, so you can listen to her session. Totally your wish. Okay. So JP, what I was really looking at is that from this end, yes, we do want, of course, mediation should become popular, but the court system part of it, what is happening in the US is what we are going through is that the lawyers control mediation there. Today in your court system, or in the sense in your mediation center also, the lawyers are earning good fees while the mediator is getting nothing. So that part of it will continue. And ultimately, the mediators will get disillusioned and move out because they have the work. They have enough litigation work, so they come in sometimes and they maybe go away. But it doesn't develop as their practice, and which is where, I mean, I feel that if we go in that direction, mediation is not going to take off in the way we would want it to, because these are people who are doing it because of the passion, but not something that they are. I mean, ultimately, look,
let me tell you an answer to this, Vikram. Today, instead of calling mediation an appropriate dispute resolution system, I am looking at it as a complementary dispute resolution system. And that's what in New Jersey and some other places, now they're referring to mediation as complementary system to the existing litigation system. Now, what is the advantage of a lawyer or mediator, as you say, like, the incentive? What does he get out of this? He's a satisfied client. If it results into a settlement, the client is happy. In case it does not result into a settlement, the mediation process is fair and it makes him happy still. I mean, he still goes back happy. We have had instances where, people say, sir, it was not in my luck. You tried your best. I think the other side was being unreasonable, or I was, a lawyer will tell you, my client was being unreasonable. Maybe we'll look at it again in future. Therefore, we always say mediation never fails. Yeah. It's because it's a process. Parties fail. After 6 months down the line, parties would again meet and they will be empowered enough to now take that conversation forward, the negotiation forward, and settle on terms which were being offered then, or improvise, terms that they can come up with. So therefore, the mediator or the lawyer doesn't lose. He has a satisfied client. Tomorrow, therefore, I'm saying call it complementary. Let litigation go on, let arbitration go on, and mediation go on as side by side. Why can't they complement each other? You already have Medab, AbMed, where they are complementing each other. So we can have litigation and mediation complementing each other.
Of course, Gabriella is here. First session actually is on time. So what we'll have to wrap it up, which is, of course, half an hour for you wasn't enough. For Gabriella also half an hour is not enough. But this symposium, I've tried to do shorter sessions so that I can have a number of more sessions in these days. But JP, I'll tell you what my concern is, that on one end, of course, this aspect, of course, the remuneration part. But other thing is that institutions are wanted to take control, which is happening in some countries, that it goes to certain institutions, so they have control over that aspect, that you have to come to us. Jimena is there from Ecuador. There also the same situation is there. They have these institutions, these mediation centers. They are coming in. For a country like ours, it's very different from a smaller country, but that's what the attempt was when the bill was made. Then the certification, those institutes, if they get a hold of it, saying you have to go through this. In a country like ours, I mean, imagine how many people are there to actually do that, if you call it training, to do that. So there's what we are doing is we're picking up legislation from countries which are much, much smaller. Maybe 30 million is huge. 30 million, 60 million, we are talking 1.4 billion. I think that's where we went wrong. We tried to, it was a hodgepodge. Let's pick up from here, let's pick up from there, let's put it. So of course, we'll have to have a larger discussion. But JP, 19th, there's a workshop, please, if you can come in. So thank you very much. I mean, this was too short for a discussion with you. We'll do another one.
No, anytime. Yeah. You see, the only thing is, let's look at the healing touch.
Absolutely.
I was told by this professor, James Holbrook in America, when we went for our TOT, he said, APG, you know the difference between an American mediator and an Indian mediator? He said the American mediator is a settler of disputes. And an Indian mediator is a healer of disputes.
Okay. So JP, what you need to do is, for the healing part of it, my World Mediation Circles, we have to make these in communities and everywhere. You have to be part of that process. Let's create that environment of that. So thank you very much. Thank you, JP. Wonderful talking to you as always.
Thank you.